What up, Woodland Park? Oh man, hey, so I know this isn't fun. None of this stuff is fun, but if you care about our city, you'll stay up to date with what the planning commission's doing. This was something I just learned about 5, 6, 8, I don't know, 8 years ago. The planning commission is really where all the power lies. These guys, they get to pass what comes and goes here in Woodland Park, and sometimes a city council just votes right along with these planning commission guys, even if it's not in the best interest of our city. And so, but city council has a lot to say with what goes on in the planning commission, because city council is who appoints people to the planning commission. But let me tell you something. People don't want to be on the planning commission unless they have a vested interest in what's going to go down in our town, unless like they may stand to make some money if something gets through planning, right? And so that's why people get on planning, and or these people that are kind of like they want to be in control, they want to have a say on what happens. They may not have a vested interest money wise, but they want to have a say on what happens. So I'm just going to kick off and catch up on the planning commission meeting that happened. You can join me. I'll probably mute my microphone, but I'm listening to this planning commission meeting, and just want to make sure that, you know, we're staying on top of what's happening on planning. Our city council members have that vital part in appointing those committee members and appointing those people who are going to be on planning commission and approving what they pass through. Lots of stuff going on in Woodland Park, but this one, I don't know how interesting it is, man, but you know, if you care about the future of Woodland Park, then you're going to care about what's happening on planning or staying up with them, or you're going to vote council members like me who are going to keep you up to date with what's happening. Like if they try to slide something through on planning, shady, like, you know, you could always come to the underground and I would throw it down for you. So remember that come election day, April 7th, 2020, Dalton for council. Let's watch this planning commission meeting. See what happens. See what's really going on
and
in
ultimately
Woodland
allow
Park,
for commercial
Colorado.
uses on this
Look at
site.
this, sponsored by.
Let's call to order the
Y'all let me know if y'all don't got audio.
meeting of the Woodland Park Planning Commission for 23rd. Probably have to turn the mic on. Okay. As I say, we'll call to order the meeting of January 23rd, and we're going to start with order and roll call.
Mr. DeVoe.
Here.
Mr. Watson.
Here.
Ms. Carrick.
Here.
Ms. Good.
Here.
Mr. Hartsfield.
Here.
Mr. Larson.
Here.
And Mr. Scanlon.
Here.
And for the record, both Lee Brown and Jerry Penland are absent this evening.
If you would join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Okay, public hearings. About the minutes from the January 9th meeting. Anybody have anything? If not, I look for a motion to approve those.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, public hearings. A request by William L. Page for a 2-year extension of the time limit to begin construction of the Best Western Hotel in the Gold Hill Square South Building Number 6 PUD Zone District pursuant to the Municipal Code 18.30.050. Staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a brief presentation tonight. So this is an extension, a 2-year extension request by Mr. Page for the approved PUD that was for the Best Western Hotel, approved in 2016. The Best Western Hotel is proposed as a 70-room hotel, And the PUD amendment was to allow for this lodging use to replace the commercial use that was on building number 6. This is located at 703-717-719 Gold Hill Place. And the City Council public hearing on this request is scheduled for February 20th, 2020. So again, it's to consider a 2-year extension of the PUD amendment that was approved in 2016. It was case PUD number 15001. It's an amendment to extend the ability to construct pursuant to this PUD from February 4th, 2020 is when it expires, and it's to extend it 2 years, which would make it February 4th, 2022. And that is to construct a 70-room hotel at Gold Hill Square South, building number 6. So the Planning Commission approved the original 2016 PUD on January 14 of 2016. So it's been 4 years since the PUD approval, and Council approved the dimensional standards on February 4th of 2016. And then there was a 2-year extension granted by Council. It did come before the Planning Commission as well at that time, and that was in 2018. So that 2018 extension expires on February 4th of 2020. And that is why the applicant is here tonight. So just a little bit of background on Gold Hill Square South. The PUD was originally approved in 1997 under Council Ordinance 726. It was rezoned to planned unit development, and ultimately it allowed for commercial uses on this site. In 1996, the county rezoned this lot. It was rezoned to service commercial. It was originally developed as under the C1 zone as commercial. You'll notice that it was originally constructed in 1978 through 1999, so it's been constructed in bits and pieces. City Market went in 1998, Gold Hill Wines in 2002. Many of you are probably familiar with this shopping center. If you haven't shopped there, you should. Anyway, here's an aerial. The proposed hotel is shown in a yellow boundary here. This is building number 6. The proposed hotel is in yellow in terms of the footprint. And so this gives you an idea of the surrounding areas, the parking layout as it exists today. This is the old Ent Bank. This is the entrance to the shopping center, the Loaf and Jug up here. This was the final development plan for the PUD amendment. Again, the proposed hotel is located in yellow on building number 6. These were the approved elevations and schematics for the exterior.
I would have totally done a aerial view of this. Most people in Woodland Park know exactly where this is at. This is one of the main shopping areas. It's got a couple of restaurants in it. The Wendy's is there. 67 comes straight in there. So everybody knows where this is at.
It was approved for lodging use, except that the general circumstances and conditions surrounding the site are unchanged except for a few points that I just wanted to make a note of. So this Planning Commission realizes, of course, that the 2020 comprehensive plan will be in review this year, and we're also looking at a comprehensive review of the zoning regulations concurrent with the changes to the comprehensive plan. We're hoping those zoning regulations will be done by 2021, hopefully, if not sooner. So there are potential changes to regulations. We don't know what kind of regulation changes might be related to the PUD process. If this extension is not granted, the applicant would have to go through the PUD process under the new regulations, for instance. That's just one example of some of the circumstances that might change in this extension period window that he's asking for. The 65-plus room Microtel Hotel is getting closer every day to completion. It has taken a long time, but it is hopefully going to be finished mid-2020-ish. We're hoping maybe by February, actually, by the end of February, maybe. So they are ongoing, and that hotel should be opening quite soon. And then, of course, Goodwill used to be located in the site where this hotel is proposed, and they have moved to Paradise Circle and have had a lot of success at that location. So those are some of the changes that have occurred. And the applicant, Mr. Bill Page, who will be coming up to speak to you tonight, can tell you more about what has changed. So in 2016, for the PUD approval, these were the findings that were made by the Planning Commission and City Council for the dimensional standards. That the proposed lodging use is compatible with the surrounding uses in the development pattern, that it complied with the 2010 comprehensive plan and the regulations in place at that time for the master plan. That it was logically developed or is logically developable with all the necessary infrastructure improvements and services in place or can be placed in place. It is in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare of the Woodland Park citizens and visitors to the city of Woodland Park, and that there are no adverse or unmitigated impacts to the site, to the natural environment, to the neighborhood, and it is a benefit to the community. So these were the findings for the original PUD amendment. Tonight, the Planning Commission is here to hear about an extension request, and the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to City Council. And again, the City Council public hearing on this item is on February 20th. The Planning Commission recommendation is based on Municipal Code Section 183050B, which states that you have to have a public hearing before the Planning Commission for an extension request, and that the applicant has to submit evidence showing substantial need that warrants this extension. So these are not really regulations, and staff does not have a staff recommendation with this extension request. It is up to the Planning Commission to deliberate this item to determine if the applicant has shown substantial need to warrant this extension. The recommendation that you make tonight will go forward to the City Council for their consideration. So that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bill Page, who is the applicant, is here tonight and would like to make a presentation.
Floor is yours, Bill.
Bill Page is a longtime property owner in town, from the movie theater to all kinds of properties around town. So he owns a lot of different properties. He's an interesting character. You're going to enjoy this. We will give our full analysis, full breakdown of what goes on. This audio is about an hour long, and so I need to listen because I want to listen and hear what he's going to say, and then I'll respond to it afterwards. We'll talk about this particular property, what's been there, what's been proposed there over the years, different things. So it'll be interesting to break down this. We'll pull up on Google Earth. I'll show you exactly where this property is and what they want to build there. So you'll have a better understanding of what's going to take place. They haven't even started talking yet, so you're not missing nothing. He's just getting his presentation set up so that he can give this presentation before the Planning Commission. Now, this Planning Commission is just voting on for this to go to council, because this is going to come to council. So
Presentation, and
here we go. This is Bill Page
a good start to
from
explain
Page Properties.
what went on in front of city planning and city council here the last 5 years. I wanted to start with my presentation by giving you 50 years of history on this property. And I purchased this property 50 years ago, and it was zoned C1 at the time I purchased it. And the reason it was zoned C1, the mayor and city council back in the late 60s, in their wisdom in the future, ordered them the master plan. And they hired an engineering planning firm from Omaha, Nebraska, Leo Daly and Associates. They at the time were nationally known. And they came up with a master plan for the city of Woodland Park. The Woodland Park, a lot of the plats and so on went back to the 1890s and so on. And so at that time, 50 years ago, city council and the mayor thought it was appropriate to start doing master plans in Woodland Park. I got a copy of the master plan probably 52 years ago. And I got it from Glenn Bolson. He was the first hired city manager in Woodland Park. And I studied it for a couple of years, and I'm a licensed architect. I was a practicing architect. I used to work for city planners when I was going to college and so on. And so at that time, I was studying it. I owned the property at Gold Hill North. And I noticed that this property was already zoned C1. The planning, the city council and planning did that to encourage some commercial development in Woodland Park. At that time, where the Callahan was at, there was a grocery store originally, and Main Street was about a block and a half long on the north side in the 60s and so on. So about 10 years later, I started, after I built Gold Hill Square North, I started construction at Gold Hill South. And the reason I started construction, I got a pre-lease to build a grocery store at Gold Hill South, and I had to move about 30,000 yards of dirt and to do that. And so that's how Gold Hill Square South got started. It took about another 13, 14 years to get all the buildings built at Gold Hill South. Kind of did them one at a time. And all that time we had this C1 zoning in place. And so about 25 years ago, we had a new city manager come to town, Don Howell, and a new city planner who had worked with Don before, Brian Fleer. And 2 or 3 years later, well, suddenly we got all this overlay zoning happening to existing projects here in Woodland Park. And which I think it was a good control feature, controls for city government to have and so on. But it takes away some property rights of what you can do with your property in the future after that happens. And about 5-6 years ago, I started looking into doing a hotel where Woodland Hardware and Goodwill was at. And when I originally designed that building, I'd laid it out for a hotel to have parking where the hardware store space, you could have parking on that level, and you could have a hotel lobby up where the Goodwill level and Sherman-Williams is at. So anyhow, that's how I got to having meetings with Sally when we were looking at doing a hotel project. And I want to tell you about the 3 most important things about owning a piece of real estate. And it is location, location, location. That's Highway 24 and 67 intersection. And this site has that important feature. The next most important thing about owning real estate, if you want to develop it, is market need. And I ordered a market study on June 3rd, 2015 about market need for a hotel in Woodland Park. It says proposed Best Western. And so we went along and working with the Best Western people, trying to cost the project out and take a look at financing and so on. And so then we got down to getting real serious about doing the project. So I had to order an update on my market study. That's January 20, 2017 for the same hotel. So that came back favorable. We only had the Country Lodge here at that time. And so we proceeded to do this hotel. We had to relocate Sherman-Williams. I had all of the other space was available to reconstruct and do parking structure on the lower level and lobby level on the upper level. Goodwill had moved out and built their building. So we'd had conversations going on with Sherman-Williams Real Estate for about a year, and about doing a new building for them and relocating their store. It was going to be south of City Market, east of the auto parts store. It's on a vacant, almost an acre site we own south of there. It's rough graded right now. It's right north of the Microtel and south of City Market. And so we started talking with a real estate. We first leased with Sherman-Williams about 25 years ago. They had 2,800 stores in the United States and Canada. And we one time we added on to the store, and we dealt with a real estate manager in Dallas and so on. And so this time we were dealing with a real estate manager from Los Angeles or San Francisco. And he put us in touch with their engineering architectural department in Dallas. And they gave us prototype store elevations and floor plans. I think I might have shown those to Sally. And so we went ahead and developed costs and got down to what to build this new prototype building to relocate them. Kind of got that all worked out about November in 2017. And so then we started talking about lease terms, and we sent some things back, and we were back dealing with a real estate manager in San Francisco. So we were communicating with him, and anyhow, he got where he wasn't returning my phone calls in February and January. I'd sent some stuff to him, and finally I kept calling, and one time he answered. And so he said, Mr. Page, corporate, he's talking about corporate Sherman-Williams, has given us a new direction. We're only going to do any effort on, we're not going to do any relocations. We're only going to focus on building stores in new emerging markets. So that's corporate direction down to their real estate department. And so I sent him another letter, asking about a reconsideration. And he sent me a email back from his corporate office in San Francisco. And he was at his office Monday morning, 4:30 before a.m. So, I mean, this is corporate world. I mean, they have their goals. Their goals sell paint. And so he refused to communicate with me anymore. So this is the predicament that I got myself in with dealing with Sherwin-Williams corporate and so on. But I'd asked Sally for the first extension if I could do like 5 or 6 years, and she says, no, you got to do 2 years. You can only do 2 years. So I'm back for my second 2 years. I don't mind coming here every 2 years to greet you people, answer any questions. But I'll probably be back for another extension or two before we get this. Time's going to run out, and I'm going to end up holding the cards what I can do with my property to do the hotel. So that's my story, and I ask your consideration to approve this extension, and maybe you could do longer extensions if you redo your regulations for odd situations. If you're in the real estate development business, once you get started on a project, you want to move along and not drag it out. But in dealing with the client I'm dealing with here, I'm really getting stretched out. But it's a good location. We got a good plan, and we got like 30 some enclosed parking spaces out of the weather, which would be nice in the wintertime. And I think it's would be a compliment to the 2 other hotels here. And maybe it was a good thing I got delayed or sidetracked, because Mark Rabot got his hotel started about the same time we were trying to get ours started. And maybe this will give him time to adjust into the market and get comfortable with his 2 hotels he's got, and we can come along and do some expansion here when I get the thing straightened out with Sherwin-Williams, where I go ahead and build the facility. So I can answer any questions.
So is the problem that the paint store has, what is the length of lease, their lease, present lease? Is that the problem, why they can't leave? What is the lease?
Yeah, I mean,
time?
they got control. They can stay there till the end of their
And
lease
how long
lease
is that?
options. And I read an article in the Wall Street Journal about 6 weeks ago about Sherwin-Williams corporate. They've got other vendors selling their paint. They now have over 5,000 stores in the United States and Canada. And so, for their focus to grow their stores, their corporate directions not to be, they don't have any incentive to do a relocation in a market they're already in. It's just going to take more of their personnel time and stuff like that. And so
when is their lease up?
we need about another 6-7 years of approvals, and then I'm going to be holding all the cards.
Could you repeat that again, please, sir?
What?
6 or 7 years?
Yeah.
So their lease is up in 2026?
Yeah, like 20.
Yes or no?
Yeah. No,
2026.
2020.
So when you proposed this project, I was on the commission then, and then I was on the commission when we renewed it.
Yeah.
you knew that this was going to be a concern.
I did. That's why I asked Sally for a longer extension. She said we only get 2 years.
Okay.
That's in our regulations. I would have asked for the extension, that a one-time extension 4 years ago.
You have no way to terminate their lease?
What?
Can you terminate their lease?
Getting into I don't have a legal right in the lease language to terminate their lease.
Thank you.
I'd be into a lawsuit, but I don't want to get in a lawsuit with a corporate giant like that.
So your plan is to wait them out?
That's my plan. I think with the microtail, going to open here this spring or summer, that's probably a good planning for Mark Rabot, or a good situation for Mark Rabot, and it gives us time to order a third market report once I know I got control over my real estate again.
Sally, if the changes that we're doing this year in zoning and ordinances and that sort of thing, if they would normally impact this property, he is grandfathered by virtue of, so if we approve the extension, he is grandfathered.
That's correct.
So those wouldn't apply.
the
If we don't
plan-
approve, why then he would have to come back to us to
That's correct, yes.
change.
So if we had granted this 2-year extension, what action would have to take place on the developing side to keep that active? And would they have to have a building permit at that point? Would they have to have a ZDP, or what would have to be finalized to
If-
keep that
Right,
active?
if within the next 2 years, a zoning development permit, a ZDP is issued, then that will validate the project to continue.
Thank you.
Sally, would it be possible to grant him an extension up until the time when the new PUD standards are in, and then we'll renegotiate it at that point? So it's not grandfathered in?
No, I think that might be a slippery slope.
I
We
understand that.
don't know whether the PUD standards would change in the review or not.
At least it gives us the opportunity. And it gives him an extension.
But it ties it to something more nebulous.
It's pretty nebulous right now.
No, you have an exact timeline. He will have to come back in 2 years for another request if a ZDP is not issued. Whereas you're thinking to tie it to new standards and
So at the end of those 2 years, if he comes back to renew it again, at that point, it would change to the new standards, correct?
if there are new standards at that time, I suppose the city council and the planning commission could recommend that if those standards apply. However, he has an approved plan at this point.
He has an approved plan today.
Today.
But if we were to reject the request for an extension and the time runs out, there's no more approved plan. And any plan in the future would be subject to whatever changes may occur
Yes.
that affect this property.
Yes.
Okay,
He
I
needs-
just want to clarify that.
Needs the extension in order to keep the plans valid.
Okay.
I've got a question, Sally. To the best of your knowledge, do you know of any other properties that have had several extensions on them that have later on developed into the original project? Or are we going into an area of uncharted water?
I'm sorry, Vicki, I didn't quite understand that. What do you mean by
How many-
amended their original?
Yeah, how many other,
She's asking how many people have done this and got the extensions. So
can you think of any?
So Laura's correct. The Paradise, Top of Paradise Master Plan has been extended. However, that's typical of a master plan. It's not a development plan, it's a vision. And that 200 acres in Paradise Estates, Top of Paradise, is a long-term, single-family development for many years. So as far as commercial properties, we've done some extensions of conditional use permits. The Big O Tire had most of them expired and they didn't move forward.
So nothing as far as something that would be on a 10-year plan?
See, I think what concerns me about this is, and we don't know each other. And I know I have many friends in the real estate development business, not in this area. And I know many projects have unforeseen complications. But one of the things that troubles me about this a little bit, since I've been sitting here for a couple of years, and I happen to like Best Westerns, is that this was a known problem at the time that we approved this project. This company had a 15-year lease with you that was impossible to break. And bear with me just for a second.
Sure.
And now that we're confronting, in the city, a relook at how land is going to be used, I sort of see the extension as a way to not necessarily be in compliance with what any forward-looking regulations may require. That's just my perspective. So I have concerns about, and you're going to have to be back again 2 more years. I may or may not be on the commission asking for yet another extension, but you'll be grandfathered into whatever today's existing regulations are, even if the city were to radically change its view on how land may or may not be used in the future. Go ahead.
Could I respond?
Sure.
Okay. We had submitted and developed a site plan on this lot 10R south of City Market with a prototype building for Sherwin-Williams, and we had costed it out, and we thought we definitely we didn't have a signed lease agreement and termination agreement, but we thought we had a deal, put together with Sherwin-Williams. And then end of the year, planning for the future year, corporate decides they don't want to focus on doing any relocations. So I didn't mislead.
No, I didn't. And if I implied that, I did not mean that, sir.
Okay.
I apologize if that's what you heard.
Okay, thank you.
At this point, we're not at public comment yet, okay? But we're getting there.
Okay.
All right. We can, at this point, ask for public comment if there is any, and then proceed on and then go back and we can continue this conversation after we do that. Is that your pleasure to do that? Do we have anybody signed up for public comment? That's okay. If you're not signed up, you'll be able to get up and talk too. Okay, don't worry about that. They get first shot. Okay. Bill, you might just want to take a seat. We'll go through this and then we'll call you back up again. Okay. Richard Harris.
Yeah, that's me. I'm just here for the work session.
Okay. Joe Fury.
My comments were regarding electronic billboards, so you want that now or later?
Pete Labar. Wow. Okay.
Good evening.
Well, y'all know who this
Planning Commission
is.
Members, Pete Labar, 750 East US Highway 24,
This
Woodland
will be
Park, Colorado.
interesting.
I'd like to reserve the right for later comment on the sign-up sheet, but taking the opportunity, I'd say I would recommend that you all support the 2-year extension. Here's the reason why. He's going to have to come back in 2 years. If things change so radically in 2 years, you'll have the opportunity, the Planning Commission at that time will have the opportunity to deny and say, come back with a new revised plan, new PUD, whatever that meets the code. He's in a 7-year lease. He's not going to get out of it. It saves him the cost and the time to have to resubmit everything 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 7 years from now. And if nothing changes between now and then, everybody's a winner. The community wins, Bill wins, we all win. So I would strongly recommend that you do that based on that premise that in 2 years' time, if you do rewrite the code, he'll have to come back. You can say no or revise your plan and we'll approve at that point. Thank you for your time.
One question about that. I thought you guys said that in 2 years, he'd still be underneath the old and grandfathered in. Is that true or not?
If this extension is approved right now, it's valid till 2022. If he begins construction before 2022, he is grandfathered into the,
Gotcha. If he begins construction before that.
right.
Okay. Vicki Alexander.
Vicki Alexander, 1360 Crestview Way, Woodland Park. I became a resident of Woodland Park just in October, but I've lived in the area for over 20 years. I own Thunderbird Cabins, which is next to the high school. It's 14 units. You may or may not be aware of it, but I've owned it for about 4 or 5 years. My concern is a bigger issue, and that is anyone on the Planning Commission who, it seems like that we're always thinking that there's going to be an increase in regulations, that there's going to be an increase in demand. I'd like to think of us as a government for our community that looks at ways of reducing regulations, not increasing them. And so I'd like for you to think about that, because whenever we're thinking about increasing regulations, we're thinking that that's for the better, and it's not always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hashtag drop the microphone right there. She said, slow down on the regulations.
Mr. Weaver.
Oh, my man, Mark Weaver's in the house.
Woodland Park, and I just want to recommend that you approve this extension for Bill. As a fellow developer in the town, it is hard to get all these things to line up. Your financing, your market, your property, all these different things require a lot of time and a lot of expense, which he seems like he's outlaid. So I just encourage, he's not trying to string the Planning Commission or the city out here. It's just a hard process, and this is a product that we need in Woodland Park.
Anybody else? Name, rank, and serial number.
Valerie Lundy, 1450 Eagle Trace Court, Woodland Park. This is not personal, Mr. Page, at all, but I don't know the history from the standpoint of when the Microtel was approved, where the other ones stood. But how many rooms do we have in the town right now? If the Microtel, when it gets finished with the Country Lodge and the other, do we even need another 70? It's a question. I just don't, not to mention the fact that where that thing is, you can't park over there already. And if there's 32 spots and 70 rooms, we won't be able to park at the market. That's all.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, we'll close the public hearing at this point. I don't think there's anything to rebuttal at what we heard. That's because most of them were for you. Okay, but we'll just continue on as far as the commissioners ask any other questions at this point in time to either staff or applicants.
I've got a question concerning looking at the, how many parking spots are going to be underground as far as covered?
I have an image if you wait a few seconds while I pull it up. And Bill, if you want to answer that question, how many parking stalls in the underground section of the hotel?
Was it 32?
32 spaces,
32.
32 within the parking garage
And
is what
48
was
surrounding.
in the 2016 plan.
To a total of 80, okay. So how many parking spots roughly for the square footage on the office slash, on the office building, the old end building, are being allotted for that building? We're just trying to see if there's going to be enough parking spots.
This was reviewed 4 years ago with the approvals based
Yes.
on those factors.
Right. And you don't want to re-review it with this. This is simply a question of extension. It met the standards for parking in 2016 when it was approved.
Okay.
Now, those standards may change before 2022.
Other questions from anybody? Bill, the way this is going on, you know, I will be here in 2 more years. I was here in 16.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking from the nursing home if you don't get billed this time.
Okay.
Okay. Just let it talk.
I look forward to seeing you again.
Your pleasure.
I think we should grant the extension.
Are you making a motion to that effect?
Are we ready to do that?
Nobody else got any questions?
Yes, I am making a motion
Okay.
to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Would you call the question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Beginning with Jeff Watson,
Yes.
Ellen Carrick,
Yes.
Vicky Good,
No.
Ken Hartsfield,
Yes.
Larry Larson,
Yes.
Peter Scanlon,
Yes.
John DeVoe.
Yes.
Motion passes.
See you in 2 years.
Thank you, folks.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Bill, stay healthy. We got to do this together 2 years from now, okay? Stay healthy. Oh,
We will talk about Vicky White's no, but I want to hear some more. Let's see what's going on.
other directors?
Just 2 reminders. First of all, starting February 3rd, the city is beginning the Citizens Academy second year round. I know that Ellen Carrick has signed up for this semester, and Chairman DeVoe had attended last year's Citizens Academy. There are a few slots left in the academy, so if you haven't signed up, certainly make contact with Karen Casey. And if you can spend the 2 months going through the Citizens Academy, it's well worth the time to learn very in-depth about the city, all the aspects. So that starts February 3rd. And then we will have a meeting on February 13th. And my plan is to devote the entire meeting to our code revision for single family in the multifamily zone. So tonight I will be giving you the definitions that I received from the Division of Housing, and then we'll devote our next meeting on February 13th to that discussion. That's all that I have.
That citizens committee is worth doing. Okay, you're going to go through every department within the city, how it's run by the department managers. My wife and I did it. Be committed to make every one. And it's very, very worthwhile. And they feed you too. You get free meal on it. No, but I mean, it's really worthwhile. So if you want to get signed up and really see how a city works, it is absolutely worthwhile to go do that. Okay, at this point, we're going to adjourn the regular meeting and go into the work session. Laura has requested a 5-minute break to get everything set up for that. And it's also a potty break time as well. So it's not quite 10 of. We'll get back here and try to get going.
Mute. So that's the planning commission meeting. Now I want to make a couple of notes about the vote that went out today. They were voting on sending this to council. So it's still going to go to council for approval of the extension, but it will pass in council. And you heard a couple of people speak. One, Mark Weaver. I've known Mark Weaver a long, long time in town. Me and Mark have actually ridden motorcycles all over this state together. Mark is an amazing man, a very integral man, and he does a lot of commercial real estate in the Woodland Park area. Not everybody that Mark works with, I get along with, by the way, but Mark works with a lot of different people, and Mark is a very, very integral man. I love Mark, his family. They grew up, his kids grew up, been riding motorcycles and dirt bikes with his children. And so just know that Mark Weaver, when he stands up to the microphone, I listen. And like I said, I don't always agree with everybody Mark does business with, but he does business with everybody. Mark too knows more people in town than I do, for sure. And I say that and I know a lot of people in town, but Mark Weaver knows a ton of people and does business with a lot of people. I think Mark has the best intentions for Woodland Park as a developer, as a real estate agent. I love Mark Weaver. I can't say enough good about Mark Weaver. So I could sit here and I might have to one day have Mark Weaver on the Underground show. If he'll come on, I'll trick him into coming on. I'll tell him we're going to talk about motorcycles, and then we'll start talking about how much he loves Woodland Park. So Mark Weaver is an amazing person. He has an amazing family, and I love him. Who else got up? Pete LeBar. Well, Pete LeBar, total opposite of Mark Weaver, in my opinion. Even though Mark Weaver works with Pete LeBar has been very wicked to me, very evil to me. That's all there is to it. He's attacked my family. He's attacked my livelihood. He's attacked me for speaking out against things that he's done. So I got to be honest, right? So these are the people that were speaking for Bill Page. When I talk about Bill Page is a history man. Bill Page don't fall in the same page. He doesn't fall in the same page as much as I know Mark Weaver. He doesn't fall on the same page as much as I don't like Pete LeBar. But Bill Page has always been respectful of me, at least in public. Bill Page has properties up and down Main Street, around Main Street, up and down. You heard him talking about different places. So he's been in the community a long, long time. And development takes a long time. So I can't necessarily disagree with the decision that the planning I can't disagree with the decision that the planning commission made about this, but I can also very much respect Vicky White going, I vote no. There are people that are tied to different organizations, that are tied to different sides and groups. And those groups don't necessarily want to see Bill Page succeed. And so those groups vote against his projects. You're going to see that happen both sides. Council, you're going to see people vote for him. You're going to see people vote against him. It is simply the politics of development in this town. So you'll learn more and more about that as we look and dissect and go into these different commissions. Remember, if you're not going to stay up on top of it, vote for a council member who will. How about Dalton for council April 7th, 2020? That's the election, April 7th, but it's a mail-in ballot. So once you get your ballot, make sure you're registered. If you're not registered, you can still register. You can still get a ballot. So register to vote, get your ballot. April 7th is the deadline. Dalton for council. That's all you need to remember. Everybody else, we'll be talking about everybody else. We'll be talking to some other candidates. So tune in for that. All right, we're out of here. Planning commission is some boring stuff, but when it involves your town and it involves the culture and the movement of business in your town, a lot of people are interested. And those people get there by council members. So if you don't want to pay attention, vote for a council member who is.